Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the Policy and Resources Committee meeting of the 18th of January 2021. Start with the agenda item 1, which is to receive members' apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. I've received no apologies for absence.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 is to receive members' declarations of disclosable pecuniary, non-disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest in relation to any agenda item. Do I have any? I have one. That is the item with regards to item 7, which is a grant application by the Sea Cadets. Chris Black, who's put the application in, is on my governing body, school governing body.
Can I just ask a quick one on that, David? Where the Sea Cadets building is, it's not. Is it the same building that the GVC use? Or
No, it's the one next to it.
Okay, well, sorry. I just wanted to double check because I might have had an interest if it had been a shared building, but I don't if it's not, so it's fine.
No, it's the one next to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item 3, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting to be signed by the chairman when possible, and they're the minutes of the 18th of May 2020. Is everybody happy for me to sign those when I see Terry? Seems to be nods. Okay. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for that? Susan? Oh, everybody else. Okay, thank you. So item 4, which is the Safe Offending CCTV. It's to consider the entering into a further service level agreement for the period of the 1st of April 2021 to the 31st of March 2024. I presume everybody's received that and had a look at it. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it. Happy to propose that we continue funding. It's a well-used service in the town, so something that we should definitely fund, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's no increase on it, is there, with regards to what we've had in the past. And as they point out in their letter, they have put additional cameras and upgraded as well throughout the town. So on a proposal from Sam, do I have a seconder for that? Well, I'll second it. All in favour?
Unanimous.
Come on, guys. Wakey, wakey. That's because I've got the agenda.
I've got it now.
Item 5 is the audit accounts further to minute 3020 and 3820 to consider the outcome of the external audit of the council's annual governance and accountability return. Terry, up to you.
Yes, I mean, we've been through the external audit process. Members will be aware of some of the issues we had in terms of finalising accounts, mainly down to our accounting system, which you'll see comments have been made by the internal auditor who suggested, and I quote, "It wasn't until attempts were made to produce the year-end figures that it became evident that this package was not fit for purpose of producing reports and other data required specifically for local councils." What she's recommended is that we investigate purchasing one of the alternative professional accounts packages that are aimed at local government. And I have had conversations with a company called Scribe. They provide accounts packages for a number of local councils locally, including WTC Town Council. And if members are happy, I will pursue down that line, and hopefully we'll be in a position to do next year's accounts based on a new system which is fit for purpose. Also, she picks up the point that we couldn't reconcile £239 in our accounts, which I also flagged up when this went through council. And that is one point that's been picked up by the external auditor in signing off the council's accounts when they say the smaller authority, that being the town council, has not provided an adequate explanation of the difference between on section 2, boxes 7 and 8. And they're on the documents that I've circulated. So that was already known to us. They also make the comment that we didn't hit the statutory deadline of publication by September, which was also known to council at the time because of the delay process in trying to get the accounts approved. So they found no issues otherwise in terms of our processes or our financial position as quoted. So I'd ask members unless they've got any questions, which I'm happy to answer, that they note the report from the internal auditor and they note the outcome of the external audit, which has been published as is required under the regulations. And those documents are still on our website. Also, I'd ask members to, I'd like to recommend that we reappoint our current internal auditor for a further 1-year period. In other words, for the accounts for this current financial year. Thank you, Chairman. Take any questions.
Any questions? Comments? Susan?
Hi, can I just, Terry, would you mind just repeating how much money was unidentifiable?
£239.
Oh, okay.
We just couldn't reconcile by that figure
No,
for some reason.
yeah, that's fine.
So they've had to flag that up technically because the two figures don't balance, are not the same. But we did highlight that when I submitted the documents to them, that we spent hours trying to reconcile and we were that much adrift. Our internal audit didn't have any concerns, but the external audit technically has to make that point because there is a difference.
Steve?
Muted.
Steve, you're muted.
Sorry, yes. I was just going to say many people have struggled with, many businesses have struggled with the changeover to new accounting software, particularly with the new software that was dictated by government in regards to changes in recent years. So heart goes out to the officers who are trying to work with that. And I think in this instance, we can forgive that small discrepancy.
So Terry made a few points there. Obviously, have a look at new accounting software. Everybody in agreement with that? Yeah. And obviously note the comments made by the auditors so that we can sign that off. Everybody happy?
And also, if I may, Chairman, if members are happy to reappoint again the council's current internal auditor. She's familiar with the council's practices now, and to me it makes absolute sense that we continue with the same internal auditor if members are happy.
Yeah. Is everybody happy with that as well? Okay, I think that's 3 ticks. Okay,
good
Terry?
evening, everybody. Sorry a bit late, but I couldn't get through on the link and I had to go through main Zoom to get in.
Okay, Michael. Nice to see you here.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we go on to item 6, which is the Wisbech Town Council's accounts 2021. Again, over to you, Terry.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully members have had time to go through the document, which is the usual document. Normally we receive this on a quarterly basis, but as members know, we've had fewer meetings, mainly because of the COVID situation and doing them remotely. You'll see the position as at each of the financial quarters. That's April to June, July to September, and October to December. I'll pick out some points of note and then take any other questions. Some of the comments that I would have made under this item are included in the budget report later on. For example, the fact that we've obviously had a reduction in incomes in terms of market rent. That's because of periods of lockdown. You see that's only 41.45% as at the end of Q3. Bearing in mind, I've got another quarter to go, but as we know, we're currently in sort of lockdown and reduced pitches as we speak. Same with car boot income. That's only 14.36% because most of the time that activity hasn't been allowed during the current financial year. Castle income is understandably down again then as well, because obviously it's not been open for business in the normal way. And events income, obviously that's at 0 because there have been no events. So looking at the income, we've had, so obviously the precept makes it a big chunk of the income. We've still had approximately 90% of our normal income. So we are, say, roughly 10% or £45,000 down on the income. However, moving on to the expenditure, there again, you will see that we're down on a lot of expenditure figures, like events, for obvious reasons. So there again, we've had a reduction, let's say, in terms of expenditure in the same way we've had a reduction in terms of income. I don't think there's anything significant to pick out, but as I say, I'll take many members' questions. Obviously, the events is the biggest figure with a £30,000 budget, and we've spent only a small amount of that because of repurposing some money which we would have spent on the beach day into the Box of Rainbows project, and also some money was spent in terms of the Christmas light switch on video. One thing I will pick up, I did send out an email to members saying that our stair lift had been decommissioned. It's done well, considering it's between 25 and 30 years old, according to the Stanner engineer. He has recommended, or I've received a quote for a reconditioned machine, which is obviously a lot newer, and it's in a brown material, so it's more in keeping with the the interior of the town hall. They've provided us a quote for a reconditioned machine at £5,625. You will see from the expenditure figures in terms of town hall improvements and town hall repairs and maintenance that there's approximately left at the moment just over £5,000. So I would like to recommend that we utilise that funding to basically replace the stair lift, which obviously is something I don't think we've got an option. We can't use the current stair lift. So I'll leave that with you to think about till the end of the report. But say generally in terms of expenditure, you can see we're down at this point, bearing in mind there's another 3 months to go, we're down £158,000 on budget. As I said before, we're down on income of approximately 45,000, which means at the moment we are in profit, not the correct term, but that's the term I use, in profit of 112,000 approximately. As I say, there's still 3 months to go, but obviously there will be additional monies that can then fall into reserves, so to speak. I'm happy to take any questions if members have them, but I said a lot of comments about income and expenditure for this current financial year are referenced in the later report in terms of budget setting for next year. Thank you, Chairman.
Steve.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, thank you for that, Terry. Yeah, I absolutely support replacing the chairlift. Of course, we have to do it, and that seems like a very good price, actually, cheaper than I would have expected. So that's good news. And we don't need it right now, but we do hope that the time will come one day where we can have the public back in the building again. Yeah. Just a comment on the castle. Now, I'm no longer the chairman of the castle, but I was for most of the period that that this happened, and of course, the castle was looking forward to its best year ever, really. We had several bookings for the whole month. We had a booking for an escape room. We had bookings for the whole of summer for Wiz Beach Reads. We had tons of ghost hunts, several inquiries for weddings, one of which we managed to pull off, and tons of other stuff going on. Our Halloween event was going to be fantastic, and all of this had to be cancelled. So it's pretty sad, but this is no different to the problems that everybody is facing during the pandemic. So we are where we are. Nonetheless, I think the council has done well. I thought that the Christmas event was particularly well done. That to do that streamed video, I thought was a bit of a triumph, actually, especially since we'd never tried it before. We were completely new to it, and I just think we've done the best we can for the people of the town, and hopefully this year will be better.
Susan.
Thank you. First of all, totally agree with the chairlift. We need to make sure people can get to the meetings. So yeah, backing that 100%. If we've got, am I right in thinking that we've got quite a little bit of money in the bank then, spare? No, is David Oliver's worried that I'm going to spend it? We have, David, haven't we? Could we not put extra into the grants that we give out then? Is that like a really big decision to make in this meeting, or so how much do we put aside for grants that we give out over the year?
I think we'll cover that in later on in the.
Oh, okay, that's fine then.
I mean, if I may, Chairman, obviously we've got some there again. We've got some underspending in grants of this year, which obviously we'll come on to later. But yes, I mean, I've made estimate figures for the budget for next year, which are the same level as this year, which I think are £6,000 for small grants, which people apply for, and then £36,000 for larger grants, which are more or less on a standing list, like Rose Fair, etc.
Okay.
Steve.
Sorry to come back. I just wanted to say I would certainly support spending a little bit more money on grants and things particularly where it can help COVID, but I don't want to go mad because so many big things are coming forwards now where we might need this additional funds that have just happened because of the coronavirus, because we've got things coming forwards like the work in the park, the work in the marketplace, and these are big changes for the town, and we don't yet know what it's all going to cost. But what we do know is that whenever councils try to buy things, they do tend to underestimate costs. So I think it's not a bad idea to have something to fall back on if we need it.
And again, like we said, I mean, when we discussed the budget later on in the agenda, we did actually sort of talk about having a community sort of chest, which was additional money to what we normally have for other things that we could actually do. So, and as Terry says, we've got a little bit left in the fund at the moment, and that's one reason why The Sea Cadet one is coming forward now rather than waiting until April. So, okay. Did you want to say something else there, Terry? Or
no, I was just going to make the point that you've already made, David, in terms of we've suggested for next year's budget this £20,000 community support fund, which can help where people don't have to apply necessarily for under the grants regime, but if we need money to say to match fund something or to support something, generally mid-year, there's a pot there which we can use.
okay. So everybody happy with that report?
The only thing I just made, Chairman, is something. Obviously, it links to financial and income and expenditure across the council, not just this item specifically. One thing that has been discussed, as you'll know, Chairman, with yourself and also Councillor Hoyle will know as leader, the council having a corporate credit card with, say, a limit of £1,000. Because at the moment, we're having some councillors are having, because more things now we buy online and they either have to be done through PayPal or through a card system. We can't, most people don't want to send you invoices now. Currently and up to date, some of the technology, some of the IT that we've purchased, some Councillor Tierney has purchased that and then been repaid. There are bits and pieces that I've purchased and repaid, the same with other council staff. And it would avoid effectively officers and staff lending the council money if we were able to have a corporate credit card with, say, £1,000 limit. Obviously, we get the statements, they go through our accounts in the normal way, so everything would be open and above board and transparent. And that most of the banks, when they're looking to introduce a corporate credit card, they're looking for a minute of approval, either of a governing body or a board of trustees or a council. So that's really what I'm asking for, formalisation for me to make the application on behalf of the council and to quote this meeting as the body at which the decision was reached.
Okay, any comments on that? Sam?
Yeah, I think it seems like a sensible idea, because I do think it's been difficult a number of times where we have had to go and buy things and then try and reimburse it and things, and that is difficult. But the only thing I'm slightly wary of is obviously there are some people that sometimes seek to make things into more of an issue that perhaps than they might be. So I think perhaps there needs to be maybe like some kind of check and balance in place. So perhaps if there's like the statements could be checked, you know, once a month or once every other month by sort of myself and David, just so that we could say that, you know, there's no issues here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We do it pretty much on the basis that we do with the checkbooks and that, Sam, so we can actually sign them off. Yeah. Gary.
I was going to say almost the same as what Sam just said. You know, it's amazing that we haven't got one already. It is something that I do think is needed. But as long as there's something in place, checks and balances, that's great.
Okay, any other comments or questions? So for that, I mean, obviously, for the minutes, we need to have a proposer and seconder for that. So, Andrew, are you proposing? Gary seconding? And all in favour?
That's unanimous, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so on to agenda item 7, which is the grant application from the Sea Cadets. Did you want to just go through that, Terry?
Yeah, I think it's, as I said, it has been circulated to members. I think it's relatively straightforward. They have a project for a new heating system for their premises. They're saying the total amount required for the project is £13,500, and they're asking whether the town council would make a contribution towards that of £1,000. As members will have seen in the report that you've just considered, in the special grants budget, there is an underspending of almost £6,000 on the current year. I think picking up the comment that Councillor Mrs. Warwalk made about being able to support local organisations and having money available, if members wish to support this application, as I've just mentioned, there is funding already available within the current pot, which also then means means not looking at next year's funding. We can use existing years if members are happy to support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Any comments, Steve?
Yes, I support doing this because all the cadet groups are an asset to our town, and the cadets themselves are something we should all be proud of. They always turn up and support the town for events when the events are still going on. So yes, of course we should support them.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think this is exactly the sort of thing that Wisbech Town Council should be helping out with. So for me, it's a definite yes. Thank you.
Sue?
I just kind of want to copy what everyone else has said. Having worked with young people for many years, the cadets are an absolute gem at supporting young people and their families at times, and I just can't say enough how valued they are in Wisbech. So yeah, 100%.
Okay, so Michael.
Yes, it's got my full support. They do a great job for the town and a great service for the youth of the town as well. So I'm in full agreement with that. Yes.
So could I have a proposer for that we give them £1,000? Andrew, seconder. Sue? All in favour?
Once again, that is unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. So on to the final item, which is item 8, and the floor is yours again, Terry.
Thank you. Right, remember, I have circulated not only the draft budget in the very large document, which some of you have seen previously because I've discussed it, as I mentioned in my report, with committee chairmen in terms of their aspirations or ambitions for the next financial year. I have produced a relatively detailed written report also, which I won't go through in any detail unless members wish me to do so. I will just make the point, in normal practice would be to look at this year's actual spend and income and then generally mirror that forward into the next financial year, but adding on things like inflationary increases for utilities, any known changes, any projects that are finishing, any projects starting, because this current financial year, COVID year, if you like, it's not as simple as that. So what I've tried to do is predict what I think next year would be if it were a normal year, and we still don't know to what extent that will be. So that's the basis on which I've worked. And as I said, I've mentioned some of the income issues. Markets and car boot, I suspect, will still be down even once we move into recovery mode. So I've adjusted those figures down slightly from last year. For example, market income estimate for this year was 48,000, which was seen earlier will not be achieved, but I think a realistic potentially is about 43. I've reduced car boot income down. I've reduced Castle income down because, as Councillor Tierney said, this we expected would be a bumper year. So what I've done, I've gone back to not what this year would have been and not what this year would actually has turned out to be, but what the previous year was as some sort of basic foundation. And as also mentioned in the report, it's better to underestimate the income and overestimate your expenditure, because then there's generally less trouble than if you try to do it the other way around. Also, in terms of income, I've continued to estimate the income from events at 10% of the spend, which is a process that we've done over recent years. Expenditure, business rates and utilities I've increased by 2-3% as a sort of a best guesstimate. The provision for additional Christmas lighting that was in for 20,000 for this year, I've not put in again for next year, but what I've suggested is that 20,000, which hasn't been spent, be put into an earmarked reserve for that purpose in the next financial year. But what we do have instead is a budget of £5,000 for repairs and maintenance of existing stock, because certainly, as some members will be aware, certainly the leader of the council and the chairman of this committee are aware that current stock obviously does deteriorate and some of that actually needs replacing. So that's one suggestion I've made. Other items such as general administration and equipment costs, admin stroke fees, I've generally left at this year's current level, because looking at budgets to date, those figures are still achievable for next year as they were for this year. One thing I have included, I've suggested an earmarked reserve, because as I mentioned earlier, our reserves should be higher at the end of this financial year than they were the last financial year. So I've suggested an anti-incinerator reserve, such as a fighting fund, and that's for things like specialist advice, because we may need specialist advice as we get closer to a planning application. And I've also suggested a £5,000 budget in the current budget, a revenue budget of £5,000 to cover what I've sort of nicknamed admin fees. So if we need to, costs of banners, public meetings, etc., etc. So, and also it shows commitment, I think, to the public that the council is, I won't say taking it seriously, but we are making provision for things that we anticipate will happen. I've made no separate provision for improvements to the marketplace this year, as had been the case last year and the year before, because obviously we know we've potentially got round about £400,000 available for the marketplace scheme, which should be deliverable within that. mainly because of money from the County Council and from the Combined Authority, and some money that Council already has in earmarked reserves, which has been allocated to this project. I suggested reducing down very slightly from 20 to 18,000 castle expenditure. The general overall running costs around about 14,000 as a minimum, including the repayment of the loan and business rates, etc. And to continue with the Council's ambition of reducing costs and increasing expenditure, I think we're able to make a slight reduction, and so I think it shows intent, and I think there again that is achievable. Going back to the point that Councillor Mrs Warwalk made, one thing we have included is a £20,000 community support fund, and that is so we can, during the mid-year, if there's for example, £2,000 commitment as match funding to I think it's the water park provision that FDC are making application for, we then have a fund that we can use without having to think where is money, and also we can use it as a grants top up or to support any other projects that are of community benefit that are not delivered directly by the Town Council. I think you're all aware in terms of the precept, that money we require of council taxpayers in the town is the difference between our estimated income and our estimated expenditure. The difference, or the precept for current financial year, was £372,270, which worked out at £57.57 for a Band D equivalent property. This year, it's down to 368,885 as a precept. Having said that, that is still £57.57. So they're again a 0% increase for Band D equivalent properties. The reason that the precept is lower overall, but the reason it's the same for Band D equivalent household, is because of the number of Band D equivalents, according to Fenland District Council as the rating authority, has reduced from 6,466 to 6,408. And that is a result or a consequence of the additional number of sort of applications and people in receipt of council tax support payments. So that means we'd achieve a 0% increase in the precept while being able to deliver the draft budget that's been proposed. Going on to financial reserves, we've got general reserves, i.e. those that aren't earmarked for specific projects, at around 142,000 at the end of the last financial year. As members will have seen from the earlier report, my prediction is that will be at least 200,000 by the end of this financial year, and it does enable us to easily provide earmarked reserves for the Christmas lights, as I mentioned, and also this £30,000 fighting fund in terms of the anti-incinerator working party and its work. So I think, so in conclusion, here's a draft budget for 2021-22, based to some extent on the current year, but also reflecting the fact that the current year is not an example year. The Band D properly equivalent council tax will be £57.57, which is the current of the same financial year, and that equates to a 0% increase in the precept per household for 2021-22. What I would do is recommend that members note the information that's reported and consider approving the draft budget and consequently the precept for the next financial year. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Okay, any questions? Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Terry. It's a great budget again. I really think that you presented it very well, and I think the work that we are doing and the way we're putting this budget together is very much the example of what this council has said for a number of years now it wants to do, and that is that we want to be money conscious, we want to keep driving and delivering better things for the town, but simultaneously we want to make sure that we don't endlessly hurt the taxpayer's pocket, and that's what we've done time and time again. This council delivers council tax freezes many years on the trot. There are exceptions, and those exceptions we come very plainly to the public and explain exactly why there's an exception, and it's the exception that proves the rule, if you like. So I'm really pleased to see once again that we're going to deliver a council tax freeze while still doing more and more for the town. I think it's great, and I want to support your budget.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other comments? Sam?
Yeah, just to say it's been a bit of a, well, obviously it's been difficult for everyone this year, but it's been sad that we haven't been able to do as much as we would like to. But I think this year, hopefully COVID will finally be over, fingers crossed. I mean, it's out of our control, obviously, but hopefully that'll be over and we can make a start doing some things. The marketplace, I think, will be started soon. I think there's other projects that I think are in the pipeline. I think it could be a really good year for us. So, yeah, Fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments?
Oh, and sorry, David. Another thing I just wanted to add. I think it's useful about having the incinerator budget ring fenced, because obviously it is going to cost money to fight that, and we do need expertise on that. I would just say as well, although we've said a ring fence an amount, I think obviously if it really took off and we had to potentially spend more, I think obviously we shouldn't necessarily discount that either, because we don't know what's going to happen. So I think we have to, I suppose, keep looking at that throughout the year as it progresses, really.
Yeah, and obviously that's something that Terry and I discussed as well, is that while 30,000 is sort of earmarked at the moment, the possibility is that could increase double that, you know, depending on what actually happens. And the likelihood is it won't happen next year. It could be the year after. So we can make sure that we budget in for that as we go along. So is everybody happy with the budget as it's been presented, for us to be able to take to full council on the 1st of February? 1st of February. Okay, can I have a proposer? Gary, seconder? Steve, all in favour? Okay, so that, I believe, is the, I'll just look for my agenda now, Sue. Did you want to make another comment, Terry?
No, I don't think so. No, that's all I've got on the agenda and on my list for transaction of business, Chairman.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was just looking at. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending.